Okay, so today we're going to be making something really cool, a custom Google form using HTML and styled with Tailwind CSS. Our finished product will look a little bit like this. So as we can see, we have our form here. We can just input a name, a phone number, and a little description. And then upon clicking Get Started. So here we are back in CodePen. We're just going to start with our head here, with our meta tags and a link to the Tailwind CDN here. So this is very important, the Tailwind CDN, because we're going to be working with Tailwind. And there's only one style attribute that we're going to, one style property we're going to use here. And that is for the body. We're just going to give it a little background color of this, so like a bluish purple. And the rest of the styles are going to be all Tailwind. So let's get into building the body of our document, shall we? So the first thing we're going to make is our form. We're going to start with a section ID of form. And then within this, we're going to put a container div. We're just going to give it a class of container. And we're going to give it some padding. Padding X2, padding Y, 16. And some margin auto there. And then in here, we're going to put our flex container. So this is pretty much just going to be to hold our title and our subheading. So we'll make a little flex container here by saying div class equals flex column. So that will make our elements stacked on top of each other. We'll make the text centered, width, the full width of the container. And there we go. And then inside this is where we will put our heading. So we're going to have an h1 with a class of, so for this, when the screen is at its small breakpoint, we want the text to be 3XL. Otherwise, we want the text to be 2XL. We'll give it a little margin bottom, MB4, and we'll make sure that the text is white. There we go. Fix up that little typo there. All right, so in our H1 element, we're just going to say add new client. So this will be just a little form to add clients to our database here. Easy peasy. So we'll say add new client. And that will be it for our heading. And then we'll go down and we'll make a P, paragraph. And for this, we'll say the large breakpoint. We want the widths to be 2/3. So large width of 2/3, margin auto, and text white. And in here, we'll just give little directions. Fill out the fields and hit submit to add to the database. Easy peasy. We'll go ahead and close up that tag there. And then we'll go ahead and close up the flex container that we made here to hold our text. And then underneath that, we'll go ahead and open a new one. So this is going to be for our input fields. We'll go ahead and open a new div here. We'll give this a class of flex as well, and a flex wrap. And then we'll also say, well, let's see, now we want to put this in its own div as well. So let's see, so not to get confused, we want to put this in its own div as well. So we'll say div class equals, on the large breakpoint, we want the width to be 1/2. On the medium breakpoint, we want the width to be 2/3. And we'll give it a margin of auto. So you'll see everything that this does for our input fields in a second. So we'll make our first input field here. So our first input field is going to be just another div here with a class of, well, we're going to set the padding, and then we're going to set the width, like so. And that'll be that div. Inside, we'll just have another div with one class of relative. And then we'll create the label for our first input here. So this is going to be the name. So we'll say name, label for name. And for the class, we are going to give this a class of leading text. So we'll say leading 7, text small, and text white. And then that will be our label. Easy peasy. And there you go. As you can see, we have our label, name, right there, like so. And then we'll put our input right below that. So input type equals text, ID equals name, name equals name, and class, we're going to add a few classes here. So we'll say form data. This is the most important class for our inputs because this is going to tell Google Sheets what to look for, what to consider data precisely to add to our sheet. So form data is the most crucial class there. We're just going to say width full. We'll give this little background gray 100 here. We'll set a little background opacity with BG opacity 50. So you got about 50% background opacity there. We'll make it rounded. And then we'll give it a little border as well. Border, so we say border gray 300. There we go, so we have a little border now. And then we'll set a focus. We'll set the focus to border indigo 500. So you'll see what this does here. When we are selecting the input, we get a little extra border there. So that's pretty neat. So that's our focus border indigo 500. And then we'll say focus. We'll change the background to white unfocus. And we'll add another little ring there. So let's see, focus ring indigo 200. There we go. So we'll see what that does. Pretty pleasant effect there. So focus ring indigo 200. And then we'll set the text base. Text base and outline, none. We'll set the text to a nice dark gray here. Give a little padding. And then can't forget the transition, which pretty much just makes a smooth transition from the focus. So we'll say transition colors and duration 200. So that's going to be 200 milliseconds. Ease in and out. So Tailwind makes adding all of these classes really easy. This would be a lot of CSS otherwise, just to make this simple input here. But as we can see, it's nice and smooth. We can click and we get those focus properties within about 200 milliseconds there. Eased in and eased out. So pretty nice, pretty nice. All right, so we'll go ahead and close up that input now. We are done adding classes. And then we'll go ahead and just close the rest of our divs here because we do have a few. All right, so that is our first input right there. So for the next one, all I'm going to do with this is a simple copy and paste and add a few properties. So we're going to highlight that, say Command C, Command V, easy peasy. And let's see, now what do we really need to change here? Not too much. We're just going to change the label from name to phone. I'm going to say phone here as well. I'm going to change the IDs. And then the input type is also going to be different here. So for phone, the input type is actually just going to be TEL, like telephone. And there we go. And there we go. So now we can add our phone number, like so. Easy peasy. And now for our final input, and we're only going to have 3 here. We're keeping it pretty simple. For our final, we're just going to have a little message box. So we're just going to paste, once again, our input. But with this, we're going to make a little bit of a change. We're going to set the width here. We're going to set the width of this div of our final input to full. So when we do that, you can see that it takes up the full width. Easy peasy. And we're just going to change the name, the label, to message. So that was going to be label for message. Type is going to be, let's see, it's going to be a little different actually. It's not going to be an input. It's going to be a text area. All right, so when we use a text area like so, we see we get a little bit bigger box there, but something is amiss. Let's fix that up, shall we? So text area elements need to be closed. They are not self-closing. So that's one immediately apparent thing there. Let's see, so we'll want to change a couple more properties here, like the ID. I want to set the ID to message, and just get rid of the type there. And we'll set the name here, also to message. Then we just want to make sure that we've got the same classes here as the rest of our inputs, which it looks like we do. So nothing amiss there. So we'll go down here and we'll add one more little element, and this is just going to be our submit button. Super important. So we'll just say div class. We'll add a little padding here, and we'll set the width. And we're just going to throw a little button in here. So button type equals button. For the classes, we are going to set the width to full. A little padding here, and a little padding there. And I think a little margin top as well, and get it away from the text area there. And then we'll just set text to small, font medium. And we want white text as well, so text white. We'll make this a very rounded button. Uppercase. We'll make sure our transition is set here. 200 milliseconds, just like the other. Now the transition that we want to use here, now we can't see our button just yet, so let's get this button. Let's get this button to show up here. There we go. Now we can see the button. Okay. So let's see. Now we want to style this a little bit more. It looks kind of bland. So let's see. We are going to make a few transitions here. We're going to add a color and a little transition. So we'll say transform background purple 700 and large. So at our large breakpoint, we're going to say background yellow. So on a large screen, background yellow 500. And there we go. So as we can see, the purple is defaulted as the background color for our button because we're on a small screen. On a big one, let's see, it'll turn to that little yellow there. Let's see, we'll add a little hover property here. BG yellow 400 on hover. Let's see, there we go. Anyway, so that's about it for the styles there. So let's just go ahead and close up the remaining divs that I've got open here, which is probably a couple. 1, 2, I think it was 3 or 4. 3, 4. Div, 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 div. Never have too many divs. Well, you can, but anyway, let's see what we've got so far. So we have our section here. There we go, and all of our divs are closed perfectly. So let's just go ahead and close this section. And there we go. And now when we submit the form, we want to get a little bit of feedback. We don't want the form to just submit and not show us anything. So we're going to make a little completion message here. So we'll say for completion feedback. And we'll just make a new div here. Class wrapper, give it a little margin, and we'll set the ID to completion message. There we go. We'll set the style to display none. And then we'll open another div here. We'll just put a little h1 in here with the following classes. So on the small breakpoint, we want text 3XL. Text 3XL, like so. Otherwise, we want text 2XL. Font is going to be set to medium. A medium title font, to be exact. Margin bottom of 4. And text white. And there we go. And for our little completion message, we'll just say, thank you for completing this form! Exclamation mark. And there we go. And we'll just add a little button here to reset the page. So let's go back where we were. So let's see. We'll say, yeah, we'll just use a button. And on click, let's just make it refresh the page here. So we'll say window.location.reload. That should do it. Might have to work on that, but we'll see if that works. We'll just say refresh page there. And we don't need that button fancy because that's just going to be seen after submitting the form. So anyway, we'll close up that div and we'll close up that other div there. And now, last but not least, is we want our script to run here. So this is the most important part to get our form to actually work properly, is the script. So I'll make the opening and closing tags and then close the body here so I don't forget. But anyway, let's see. So what is that script going to be? So there's a few parts of this pretty much. We want to make a function to send the data. So all of the data is going to be our inputs here that had the class of form data. So that's how Google Sheets is going to know that each input here is just another piece of data. So let's just start building our function, shall we? So we'll say function. We'll just call this send data. And then we'll create our first variable here, which is going to be form data. And that is going to be equal to, this is where we're going to get the elements by class name. So we're going to say document.getElement by get elements, plural, by class name. And then we'll feed it this form data. That is what we're looking for. So all of the elements, the class name of form data, that are going to be sent to this little variable here. So there we go. We'll just comment this. Retrieve filled form data. All right. Our next variable is going to be an I because we're going to make a for loop here. And then we're going to make a little array for our data. This is just going to be an empty array. And then we'll make our for loop here. So I equals 0, while I is less than form data dot length I plus plus. There we go. So that should work. So let's see. So we want to push all of this data onto a new row in Google Sheets. So we're going to say data dot push form data I dot value. There we go. So that'll just push our form data to the Google form. Now there's a couple more things that we want to add to this function here. So we're going to say Google dot script dot run dot save data. And then we'll comment that nicely. So this sends to Google app script. All right, and now once we hit that button, we want this whole form here to go away so we can see our completion message. So what we want to do there is just grab it by the ID, document.get element by ID. So form is the ID of our form there. And then we'll say dot style dot display equals none. There we go. So that'll hide our form once we submit. And then we just want to display our completion feedback message, which was the completion message that we made here. So we're going to grab this ID, completion message, come down here, document.get element by ID, and we'll just say completion, oops, no typos, completion message. So there we go. So that should work. Dot style dot display equals block. So that will make it show up there. Alrighty, so there we go. So we've got our script all made here, form all done. Everything looks pretty much all right here, as we can see. So what we're going to do next is we're going to select all of this, copy it, and then we're going to go over here to Google Sheets. So as you can see, I have just made a simple basic Google Sheet here that collects our name, phone, and a description. And what we're going to do here is we're going to go into extensions and then open app script. Now here's where we're going to write our function that tells Google to use our custom index HTML file to display. So we're just going to add an HTML file here. So go over to where it says files here and click the little plus sign. You just say add HTML. We'll call it index.html. There we go. And then we'll just paste our whole HTML page right in there, like so. And then we'll go back over to our code.js here, and this is where we want to write the function that returns the HTML, the HTML file. It'll host it. So what we're going to do is we're just going to make our function here. You can kind of use their boilerplate. It's not really much, but anyway, function. We're just going to call this doGet. And we say return HTML service, and you can kind of use Google's autofill. It's very handy. Dot create HTML output from file. That's what we're looking for right there. And we'll just select the index. There we go. Don't forget the semicolon. And then we need one more function here. And we're going to label this. This is the app script function to save data to sheet. So we're going to say function save data. We're going to pass the argument of data there. We'll make our variable sheet. We'll spreadsheet app dot get active sheet. So it'll probably be one of the recommended here, get active sheet. Perfect. And then we'll just say sheet dot append row and pass the argument of data again. And there we go. So we'll just go ahead and save that. Now that should be everything. Let's go ahead and test if it works. So to do that, you come up to this deploy button here. And we'll just say test deployments. URL here. And now we'll just test out the form. So let's see. Fill in the name, phone number, and a description. Hey, what's up? And there we go. As we can see, our completion message is here. And let's just take a look at the sheet. And there we go. We can see our data successfully went to our Google Sheet just fine. And there we have it. So anyway, that's it. I hope you enjoyed and learned something. If you did, please feel free to drop a like. It would really help me out if you subscribed. If you have any questions, feel free to drop a comment. I'd love to help out. Anyway, that's all I have for you today. Stay tuned for more videos.